everyone, and welcome to the Art of Leading, Captivating Leadership Narratives, all part of the stuff that growth is made of. And I am thrilled to have with us today Barry Richards. Barry is the group president of FIRST and a member of my CEO peer advisory group. Hello, Barry, and welcome.
Margaret, hello. How are you?
Nice to see you. I'm so glad to be talking to you today. And you have such an interesting journey. I know when you shared that with our CEO peer advisor group, they were all fascinated and kept asking you a whole bunch of questions. So I'm excited for our listeners to have an opportunity to hear from you as well.
Thank you. Firstly, thanks for all that you do for our Vistage group. You're a wonderful lead, and thank you for inviting me on. It's a privilege to be here, so appreciate it.
Oh, you're sweet. Thank you. So what I'd love to do, Barry, is I'd love to just really start with an overview about FIRST. What does FIRST do, and any background around that?
Sure. So I work at First, like you say, we're a global brand experience agency. We've been in business 29 years, so we've got a big birthday approaching. We're independently owned and operated. We say that First brings together brands and people through creative, connected events and experiences. We offer content, creative, digital technology, management delivery, and data services to our customers. And we do that in two ways. So that is full service or embedded solutions for experiential marketing. Put simply, we place teams directly within client organizations. And we're mainly B2B, three key offices, one in New York, one in London, and one in Singapore. And we've got about 800 employees around the world.
Wow. Yeah. And 30 years. Well, congratulations. I hope you're going to do something fun to celebrate that.
I think there's plenty lined up. We're always good for a party.
Yeah, right. That's the nature of your business, good events. So, well, that's great. And I know you have an amazing clientele. So congratulations with all the success that you guys have had. So what I'd love to do is I'd really love to spend most of our conversation focusing on you and your leadership journey. So would love for you to share, kind of what got you to where you are today and provide some history on some of the experiences you've had.
Um, First of all, I'd say it's always like it's a river, not a canal, isn't it? Isn't that the analogy? So going right back to when I left college, I left with a hospitality degree. That was my background. I barely got into university, but I came out with a graduate job. As we were chatting before, didn't start that job. Instead, I took a leap, went to New Zealand with some friends, went for a month and returned 18 months later. And that took me into the world of events. I was working cash in hand to keep moving. It was around the time when the Olympics were in Australia or just prior to that. So there was a lot of events leading to that, a lot of sports events, great fun, great experience. When I returned, I joined a small events company in the UK. They were called CVL, and they would travel to run events primarily in the pharmaceutical and legal sectors. Ironically, the person who employed me for the graduate job turned up at CVL, so that was a fun experience, but a good reminder that you
Small
manage
world.
every situation gracefully, right?
Right, right.
CVL was acquired by Maritz. They're a large performance improvement business based here in the States. We used to run European operation, big exposure early to an experience on major global brands. We launched a few technology products into the European market. So that was all very interesting and lots of variety at an early age. And then Maritz exited Europe and was sold to a company called Grassroots. They were, again, a UK performance improvement business. That was around 2006, something like that. My boss at the time became managing director, and together we went on to acquire four agencies in 1 year, consolidating under one brand. So again, another, I guess, random experience that allowed you to get exposed to all the complexities of M&A. In 2010, we were acquiring a business in Singapore and looking at a startup in New York. I took the latter opportunity, and that's how I ended up in the States. The opportunity was to create a profitable business within 2 years. We became market leader here, focused on brands and clients primarily in Manhattan. Became a Inc. 500 fastest companies to grow, and then best companies to work for with Cranes. So incredible experience, high growth, real startup mentality. That came with responsibility for expanding our offering through 4 South American offices, which was eye-opening in itself, working in different markets there. And then I discovered that Grassroots as a whole, as a group, was being lined up to be sold. My business would be part of that. I was due to move to Hong Kong, flew back through London, and then back to New York, and ended up here at first. And the rest is history. So when I started, we were around 100 employees. Now we're about 800, like I mentioned earlier, and we've experienced phenomenal growth. Been super exciting journey. Growth through all 3 key regions. We've had the pandemic, which for a live event business was pretty catastrophic as much as anything else. So we've been through the rebuild process. We've survived and thrived, and here we are looking at future growth. So it's been a super interesting ride from an essence of working in the hospitality industry and ending up in a sort of transitional industry such as live events. So.
Well, thank you for sharing that. And again, every time I hear it, first of all, your global experience is amazing. The whole entrepreneurial spirit where you've had to really roll up your sleeves. And again, you have such a wide and deep level of experience in so many different things, whether it's people, whether it's finance, whether it's the M&A piece. I mean, there's so much there. So it's just, I love hearing it. I'm like, oh gosh, if I had to do it all over again, should have taken advantage of some other things. But
Yeah.
So
Sorry, go on, Margaret.
Yeah. So Barry, if you were to go back in time, what would you say to your younger self?
Well, I love this question. My dad loved to tell his stories, and I think about all the life lessons that my mother and father have shared over the years, and I've started actually compiling a few to share with my kids, and actually wonder whether they'd even appreciate it. But the irony was, I thought about it, and I was like, I knew I would at that age. So, geez, advice I would give, I guess, first of all, just get started on something, whatever it may be, whatever your goal is. Get to first base, to use that US baseball analogy.
Mm-hmm.
Progress comes from movement. Perfection doesn't exist. I'm a strong believer in that. So you create it, and iterative. I think curiosity is a compass. I love that phrase. So follow the things that spark your interest. I know I have, and that's what's led me on this sort of variety of paths. Even if it doesn't seem practical, build and nurture relationships with people. Super important, the connections that you create over time and where that network can lead you. Took me a while, but I think get used to making mistakes, because each one means that you're moving forward and you've an opportunity to improve. I guess lastly, life's a journey, right? So if you're ambitious, be determined, and let it play out. I think for a period I was definitely too aggressive, which only harmed me, not anyone else, in terms of trying to achieve things. And the reality is you end up achieving them all anyway if you truly want to. So letting things play out is super important in life, in my opinion.
First of all, there's so many great nuggets there, and I hope your kids do appreciate it. You should write a book. I mean, it really is, each one of those things, it's such an interesting thing. It is so true. Sometimes I think, wouldn't it be great to have had a crystal ball, because it would have taken a little pressure off of feeling like there's some people who really know what they want to do when they're younger. I know I wasn't one of them. So letting it play out is hard for some people who are type A like myself, and so it's so interesting, but great feedback. And you took so much advantage. I mean, that's when I listen to your journey, it's really about, hey, I can move to Hong Kong, I can move to the US and do a startup, and it's really raising your hand and seeing different opportunities, which I think is
I kind of bring it into the workplace. I always say, if everything's on the table until it's not. So if you have that open mindset, it's kind of like you're always assessing things. It doesn't mean you're going to do everything, but it does mean that you're looking with an open mind and positively at what the opportunity could be, which, as you were saying, Margaret, so I think it's a good positive mindset to take into what we do in our daily lives as
Yeah,
well as work.
it's a great one. I love that everything's on the table until it's not, because it's um it's an abundance kind of mentality. It's how you bring people in and how do you listen, right?
Mm.
It's not about you're going into it knowing everything. It's about, hey, there's so much to learn. Let me, be open and see where it takes me.
100%.
Yeah,
Yeah.
which I love. Well, good. Well, thank you for sharing that. Wow, there's a lot there. What would you say some of the challenges you faced very early in your career from a leadership perspective, and how did you overcome those challenges?
Yeah, I've thought long and hard about this when you asked me. I feel like in your early career, you're almost wired to do everything yourself. And as you learn, you grow. And the real game changer is truly trusting others to own tasks and decisions because it allows that growth of others. I guess I see the art of delegation being almost like the number one shift to unlock growth and leadership, certainly in a sort of earlier days. I still think about the grounding of working in kitchens, like going back to the hospitality and the chefing piece was like very high pressure, high demands. I remember being very confused by some of the behaviors that I would witness in the kitchen, knowing that that's not how I wanted to act if I was in the role, so to speak. But being young, you keep it to yourself and you absorb it all. And I guess it was an underlying self-confidence and knowing the skills that I did want to show and the way I wanted to do that. So my advice that I kind of share with others that are going through their own leadership journey is like be a sponge. And like you were saying earlier, listen, observe, absorb, and act with confidence in a way that resonates with you personally. That's like the authenticity side is so important. Um,
Yeah.
so in that journey, I guess moving from colleague to manager is a challenge,
Hmm.
for sure. So communicating a clear vision, inspiring and aligning with others so that they come along on that journey with you, certainly resonated with my own sort of way. And I think it's about situations where I may not have agreed with leadership or other leaders. And it's that honesty and openness to be able to debate openly in a room and then leave and show that you're aligned in your unity
Yeah.
as a group, whether you agree or disagree. These are all sort of fundamental points during your leadership journey, I guess. And then learning to receive and act on feedback without taking it personally has been critical to my growth as well. Um, I guess it's taught me that leadership is simply a continuous learning journey. It's not a destination. You're constantly learning, like you were describing, and each hurdle was an opportunity to develop more resilience and empathy for the next opportunity or challenge. So yeah, it's kind of put simply, it's an ongoing work in progress.
It is. And you say that so well. It's interesting when I hear you say that and you say it so eloquently. Um, it, it makes so much sense, but that's not always how people approach leadership. They really look at it as more of a top down, what I say goes and things like that, versus this collaborative and ongoing improvement type of journey. So
Yeah.
interesting, and thank you for sharing that.
And
So, when you look at yourself as a leader, how do you measure success?
it's a very good question. Um, I'm sure you've heard that the saying that, I think about the man who asked, this is a random one, but the man who asked the gardener why his plants grow so beautifully. And the gardener says, I don't force them to grow, I remove what stops in their way. And
I haven't heard that. I love that.
I've heard that before a few times, and it really resonates because if I'm doing my job, I feel that my team should feel empowered to make decisions. They're growing in their capability and their confidence, and if the culture around that then is correct, they should be reflecting the values without constant oversight. And to me, that's success. If that's happening when you're not in the room and you are coaching and leading and nurturing along the way. And then I guess from that, it's the ripple effect, isn't it? Seeing other people I've led go on to lead others and
Mhm.
watching leaders and their ideas nurture and take root. And then knowing that we've achieved results without burning people out or compromising on any sort of values. letting them succeed and be the succession is super important to me. So yeah, I guess, and if I think back, we talked about earlier the journey. I guess I've re-engineered myself out of at least two companies and a number of roles over the years. And to me, that's also success, because I believe that success is when the team wins together, they grow, and then that keeps on winning long after I'm gone. And that should be my mark of whether I've achieved success or not.
Yeah. Well, and I know firsthand because I've talked to people who work for you what a great leader and manager you are. So I know you practice the things that you're saying, which is beautiful.
I
So
try,
thank you for sharing that.
definitely.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So, love to hear a little bit about mentors and sponsors that you've had in your career, and any advice you'd give to listeners about their importance, how to develop those mentors and sponsors. Any kind of advice or thoughts on that would be great.
Yes, this is a big one for me. As we know each other now very well, Margaret, from the joys of your group. I'm quite relaxed and reserved, but I also have a voice, and I put that forward in my own way. But I was very shy as a kid, and also reluctant to ask help. And I think having some solid mentors in my earlier years was definitely brought me out of that, and has helped me evolve as a person, not just in the work point of view. But I think about the first hotel general manager that I worked with was also the captain of the local cricket club that I played for. So there was an analogy there, but he took me under his wing. He gave me more opportunities than probably the regular person, which I appreciate. But it was also the ability to navigate the hotel, to work in all different areas, like we were saying earlier, getting that variety. And then from that, think about the managing director who was in charge of Marriott's in Europe, was a very gregarious sales leader, very brought people along on a very sort of opportunistic and journey, what the art of the possible. And then I worked under a CFO who was frankly brilliant, just a very, very sharp financial mind, who again gave me a different insight into the finance side of things. And most recently, I've sort of taken on that interim role, as you know, within our own companies. And it's probably, frankly, a lot of understanding and inspiration, really, from that lady who was the CEO. So from that, I've then been a mentor in our industry. There's an initiative in the events sector. And I'd say, what does it bring? It's all about creating curiosity, call it, if it's a word, coachability,
Mhm.
allowing people to sort of be more self-aware, I guess, are some of the traits that people can really benefit from having a mentor. And no, I don't look for one perfect one. I think it's about having mentors around you for different things that can help bring something different to the table and help you look at things differently. And then from my point of view, I guess when I'm mentoring mentees, it's about not giving them sort of a direction or a map. It's teaching them how to navigate without one. So almost like, how do they create and go through some of those hard decisions, and being there as a sounding board, giving them direction, but allowing them to ultimately make the decisions and make that growth and progress themselves.
I think, there's so many great points there. I love the term having your own personal board of directors.
Mm,
And,
mm.
those personal board of directors may be, experts in certain aspects that you need in your life. It could be personally, as, the parenting stuff, or it could be,
Yeah.
but it is important to figure out, who are people that you can go to and ask advice. So, on this topic though, as someone who was shy,
Yeah.
so how would you say, did did the relationship, this mentor-mentee relationship, just come about, or how did you get comfortable with that, and how were one or two of those, maybe even your first one, developed? Was it just he took a liking to you and you performed, which of course, as a mentee, you really do need to
Um,
perform for your mentor,
yeah.
or sponsor?
I'll be honest. So I was playing cricket at the cricket club, And I needed to take a year out in between my 4-year college course in industry. And all the opportunities that were available through the college weren't particularly attractive. And I'm like, well, hold on a minute. I could create one myself if I was able to negotiate this with our cricket club captain, who happened to be the GM. So we basically
Mm.
sat down, crafted this basically year-long journey around the hotel, working all different departments. But part of that was, and he was brilliant, was I would have to have check-ins with him. So it would be a case of, right, I'd get a project or an assignment, and each time I would ultimately go back to him, and it would be like, okay, how can we improve our drinks margins within the bar area? How can we, what should be the latest items that we think about for our winter menu? We're looking at the P&L for the hotel. What are the areas that we should be looking at overall from a GM point of view? We had a few incidences with customers, if for example, and it was always coming back to then how he was brilliant. It was like, how would you deal with it? How should I be thinking about dealing with it? And I just found it like
That's
exhilarating,
great.
inspiring, that he cared that much, to offer that opportunity, but also that frankly, I really felt like my opinion mattered. And I was like, at that age, I must have been 20. Hold on a minute, I can do this. I can actually do this. And it was the first time that I really truly felt that maybe I could do more than I had anticipated. And from there, it really gave me the springboard
And you
to
wanted to do more for him because he was being good to you. I mean, this is kind of that
100%.
circle,
Yeah, it was like
the
constantly like it was
flywheel.
again, not giving me the answers, not putting things on a plate, showing me how hard it was to succeed in being a GM. But if I wanted to go that path, it was clear that I could actually achieve that. And I'd never envisaged that going into the hotel originally. So still broadly keep in contact with him these days. He went on
Nice.
to have a stellar career in the hotel industry. I often would quote him or tell him, that I've quoted him again or whatever else, and he's like, "Really?
Yeah,
Why's that?" But I'm like, "No, you were that influential on me at
I
that
love
point in
that.
life." So, yeah,
Well, and it's so interesting. Sometimes you don't even realize the impact you're having on someone. What I love though about that story as well is you really took the initiative. I mean, you took the initiative saying, "Hey, I've got a plan." And again, if you're a listener looking for a sponsor or mentor, a lot of times you need to figure out how to be a good mentee also,
yeah,
by the way, and taking the initiative to something, people then sometimes it could catch someone's eye and they want to help you be successful in that. So that's
it helps to
interesting.
adapt to different
Yeah.
styles as well, right?
Yeah.
Personality styles and things like that, like you're describing, because if you're not careful, I realized I would just be sort of sat back and wouldn't be taking advantage of things if I wasn't putting myself forward intentionally.
Yeah.
It's taken a lot of work over the time, and it's like we said, we're
Well,
still
as
a
you
work
said,
in progress.
there's always a risk
Yeah,
by taking that, but there's a
100%.
lot of good things that come out of that, which I
Opportunity.
think your career is a great example of that.
Thank you.
Uh,
Yeah.
so changing topics a little bit.
Mm.
So, you know, I love to ask what people are either listening to or reading that kind of keeps you sharp. What are either a favorite leadership book that you read or something you're listening to that you think is really making a difference? Is there something that stands out either,
Yeah.
now or
Yeah.
recently?
Well, first of all, I'd say sounds quite simple, but I've recommitted myself to having a purposeful commute. So I go into the city 2 or 3 days a week. I travel, as you know, quite a bit. And I found I was just sort of deviated away from using that time effectively. And my daughter also, I'll give her a plug. She introduced me to this app called Opal, which limits your time on social media, and I love it because it's basically blocks time that you can't access stuff, so it stops you just procrastinating. But there's several things that then I use. One was getting back into newspapers, so I read the Times, giving me what I feel is a good sort of update on global outlook and current affairs. I love the Harvard Business Review, the
Mhm.
articles that you get out of there. And then I guess, yeah, I've had two books relatively recently. One is The First 90 Days Probably heard of it, which is a Michael Watkins book, and that's about giving a sort of well, first of all, we used to give a copy to leadership as well, so that everyone would have this principle of I don't know if you heard of it, but basically something like 6 months, I think it is, for someone to get up to speed and deliver positive value in a new role, whether that be promotion, new company, new role. And it really is a brilliant way of sort of giving you a guide to hitting the ground running without sort of falling over. So it's this approach of being systematic in the way you survive, but also thrive. And going back to what we were saying earlier, being a sponge, absorbing and getting quick wins rather than trying to accelerate something too quickly. You're there for a reason. And the other one that I
I have to read that. Who's the
yeah, it's Michael Watkins. It's
Michael Watkins?
first
Okay,
United
great.
States. Really has helped me over time, and I've actually gone back and read it again at some point as well, sort of thing. But the other one, which I think we've chatted about, is The Second Mountain
Hmm.
by David Brooks. It's been very timely for me, and shared it with a few friends, and made me realize that many people are going through similar periods of sort of self-reflection and where they're at in their own lives, and essentially talks about T mountains. The initial phase of your life is often about sort of build, and it's about being driven by your own personal goals and establishing yourself in life, whatever that may be or look like. And once you're there, people often get this sense of fulfillment, but also potentially emptiness, or realizing that their ambition has been focused in a certain way, whereas this is about moving beyond that towards sort of deeper, more committed relationships or direction, something with more purpose. The modern world is very hyper individualized, I suppose, where yeah, you it sort of re-navigates you. And we did that brilliant exercise in your group around rebalancing elements of that with the 5-year roadmap, which I
Yeah.
still have here right behind me, which we
Hmm.
completed in the group, and it was brilliant because it really clarified my own thoughts about where I did want to go. And if I was looking back in 5 years, how do I make that journey different to the one that I've been on? So that book was very insightful. And yeah, again, I keep sort of referring back to snippets of it on a frequent basis.
Yeah. Oh, good. Well, thank you for sharing that. I love that your daughter got you on that app. That's interesting.
That was brilliant. I was like,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's great. Well, good. Well, you've been so generous with your time. And again, I love, I always enjoy speaking with you, Barry, and I love hearing about your journey. It's really impressive and so many things that people can take and learn from. So, in closing, what would you say is either a critical success factor or secret sauce of being an effective leader today, from your perspective?
Wow. Certainly a big question. We talk often in the group about sort of the societal change, the different generational change and stuff like that. I guess if I had to pick a couple, it would be emotional intelligence. Is super important. You can't train it, but it's the ability to listen deeply, to read the room and adapt. And I think it's just as important as any technical aspect or skill. Think about adaptability. The environment is changing faster than ever, and to be effective is being able to pivot without losing sight of what ultimately your end goal is. We talked about relentless learning. I think being open to feedback, being curious, and how to unlearn old habits that might hold you back is often a good one. And probably authenticity. I think in an era where everything is under the microscope, being consistent in your words and your values and your actions and where you are is super important. And we see a lot of that in positive places, and then we see the negative side of that in some areas of society. So yeah, those are probably the few that ring to mind for me, I guess.
And each one of those, you say that very casually because I know you do live those things,
Mm.
but they're each meaty topics in itself, every single one
Himself,
of
yeah,
those.
yeah.
But well, thank you, Barry, for your time, for sharing your thoughtful insights around the art of learning. And thank you, everyone, for listening. This is the stuff that growth is made of.
Thank you, Margaret.